if you get rid of Sidney Crosby's most productive winger ever, a guy who he's boys with, a guy that finishes off a ton of Crosby passes, is Crosby going to say, all right, I got 1 year left on my deal after this, and then I'm out? And it sounds like the answer to that is no.
And I never thought that would be the case because I always thought that Sidney Crosby, number one, understands the business, understands the sport, and understands that some of these guys, like a guy like Guentzel, he's got to go make his money. And so he understands that. And the other part of it is I think Sidney Crosby is one of those guys that genuinely just wants to play his career in one place. And if he's a part of the rebuild, everyone says, oh, he doesn't want to be a part of the rebuild. I don't know that I agree with that. I think if he could be a part of the bridge to getting this franchise back and when he's walking away, they're ready to start winning again, I think he would feel good about that.
He needs a challenge, too. I mean, whenever you won and you're of that level and that tier of athlete, you always need a challenge. That's why Tom Brady was like, okay, I'm going to leave New England and go somewhere else because I've won here and it kind of ended and I need to win somewhere else just to show that I could win without Bill Belichick. I think in Sidney Crosby's case, he's such a, I do things one way. Like, I wear the same hat all season. I have the same jock all season.
Yep. Eat peanut butter and jelly.
Like, he is so, like, this is what I do, and I am not changing it. I want to stay here in Pittsburgh, and I need the challenge because we aren't doing what I expected us to do right now. And if we do rebuild, I want to be a part of that to be able to challenge myself to bring us back to where we once were. Like, that is how he operates every single second of the day, and it probably bugs him. It definitely bugs him really bad right now, which to see where the Penguins are at right now. And, that he just needs to be challenged, but challenged in his way where he does things the same way all the time.
And this wasn't an audio thing, so I just read what Rossi wrote in their conversation. And he left no doubt at the end of the piece where Rob said, do you still want to finish your career here in Pittsburgh? And Sid said, yeah, I've said that forever, to your point, Doran, to yours, Paul. But right now I'm trying to focus on getting into the playoffs. You can almost hear the quote because there's that war within himself. Yeah, I want to be here forever. However,
not worried about that.
I want to make the freaking playoffs right now. And so with all this information that we are now armed with because of Rossi's great conversation with Sid, knowing that this will not change, whatever happens with Guentzel, his thoughts on how he's going to go about the rest of his career, I am now going to stamp down firmly my opinion on what needs to happen with Guentzel. So he's hurt. That sucks. That's not going to help you trade him. It does not mean that you can't, but it's not going to help because he'll be back right around the deadline, maybe even a little bit after. I want to ride this thing out until March 8th. I want to see if in these few games between now and then they can crawl their way back. You can't even really crawl. You got to fight your way back into this playoff conversation. If you do, all right. All right. And Guentzel leaves, then guess what? It's not that you actually do get nothing for him. You do still get cap space in return because if he would not come back here. If they're in a playoff position at the deadline, you hang on to him for your captain. If not, you move on from him.
They have 9 games between now and March 8th. 9. So how many points do they need out of those 9 games for you to feel like, okay, well, they need to continue?
I mean, you really might
Can't be 18, but
you really might need to go 7-2. Yeah, you're probably going to need 14 points.
14 points. So if they get 14 points in those 9 games, you would feel like that probably then they need to add.
Well,
they need to add because that's the other discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Could they get to a point where they're close enough where they have to add, and are they going to be willing to do that? Because adding might mean trading a prospect, trading a draft pick, trading a younger guy, trading whatever to win now.
I think the only way they can add is what Hathorn said when he was on with us at 7 o'clock, and that would be legitimate player out for legitimate player in. Like Ricard Raquel, who hasn't been great this year, is a good player. Maybe he would be better served going someplace else, change his scenery, and maybe there's a similar guy, and you could do a swap like that. Like, they don't have prospects to trade. They have a second-round pick this upcoming year because of the Erik Karlsson deal. Like, they don't have much to deal unless they're dealing from the roster.
Right.
And then you're not supplementing. You're kind of just in for out, right? I think in this whole hypothetical, if they were to play themselves into a playoff position and they'd win 7 or whatever of these next 9 games, it would be impressive because they would have to do it without Jake Guentzel. Like, that would actually show me, oh, maybe they've got something here. If you can get a little hot or a lot hot without Jake Guentzel, that would make me think, okay, try to buy. And maybe you could give up a third-round pick for a minor piece in the bottom six. But any type of big shakeup here ain't going to happen unless you get rid of Guentzel.
If they get hot and during this time without Jake Guentzel, it almost proves that you don't need him right now, too.
There's also that. There's also that.
Right. If you get hot and you figure something out right now, with him being out, you can prove to yourself this year, right now, that you don't need him.
Now, that being said, if it's the flip side and they're 2-7, or even if they tread water these next 9 games and that gap remains what it is or that gap grows in the playoff standings, well, now, like, I'm willing to push this thing as far as possible to see if this group, because you brought in Carlson and you re-signed the big three, I'm willing to push as far as possible to see if they can make the playoffs and then see what happens then.